Well, hello to all of you parents of 4th through 8th grade students that attend GTCS. In the last few weeks, I've sent you an email update, and this week I decided to put it on video. I feel like that maybe I can better express myself and share some things with you that as parents you're going to want to know about how your students are doing at school. And so I'll try to be just as brief as I can to give you an overview of where we've been this past week, where we're going in the coming week, and some special notes that you'll want to know about to just help us do a good job, a really good job, not just us as a school, but you as parents, and cooperating together as a team to ensure that your child will do their very best here at the school. And so let me just start off. Part of this, it's a little difficult because part of this I'm speaking as a principal, and part of this I'm speaking as a teacher of history, science, and Bible. So I appreciate your patience as I switch hats. First, about student planners. We put together a small planner a couple weeks ago, gave that to each student in the 4th through 8th grade. They get a weekly sheet that they can follow along with to put in their homework, their assignments. And I really want to ask you to partner with us and help us explaining to the students how to best utilize the planner. First, at the end of the day, after they have been through all their classes, the plan is that they will take that planner to their locker as we're wrapping up at the end of each school day, and we'll go through the planner to see what they need to put in their backpack to take home for homework that is either the next day due, or maybe a test that's due that's going to happen in a day or two or three. A lot of our tests are on Thursdays, not all, but a lot of our tests are on Thursdays. And one of the bad habits that students get into is that they wait until the night before to study, and that really ends up not working out too well for them, as we all know. So we're really trying to pattern that at the school, talk to the students about that at the school, but also we have a very limited team, and so we're also trying to balance making sure they do what they're supposed to do and teaching them some responsibility. And that is, we show them how to use it, and then they're responsible to learn with some help, but after a while, they're responsible, and now we're going into the 4th week. They should be able to go to their locker, look through what their homework is. So that means that when you look at their planner, if they're not writing clear enough to where they can even understand their own writing, I've noticed that with a few of them, if you could give some direction with that, as we're giving direction, then we're both going to be working on the same page. And that will ensure that homework is done correctly. I've had students tell me when they come in, not all students, but a few, I just didn't do my homework, or I just forgot about it. And so if you look at that every night and you see that they have homework, then that would just help us, help them grow up and be accountable and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we appreciate that. If you haven't been out to look at the RenWeb store on your mobile device or on your computer, I encourage you to get the RenWeb app. It's much more easy to work with than perhaps online. If you want to use it online or just go to their website and log in, that's fine too, but the app might help you with grades. I usually enter grades sometime over the weekend. I did it for most of the classes, if not all the classes, that had something that was graded from this past week, yesterday evening. And so when you look at history for 4th and 5th and 6th through 8th, when you look at science for 6th through 8th and Bible for 4th and 5th and 6th through 8th, outside of maybe a homework assignment that hasn't been graded as of yet, all of their test scores, their participation grades, that kind of thing, that's in RenWeb, and should be in RenWeb also for the literature course, language arts rather, and math. And if you have any issues with that, please contact us and let us know. In science for the 6th through 8th, 4th and 5th, which Mrs. Kazone teaches, and then 6th through 8th I teach, and then for history, I teach 4th and 5th and 6th through 8th history. We use these newspapers. You've been seeing them, perhaps your child's been bringing them home. Last couple of weeks we've been telling them it's their responsibility to keep up with them. So you'll notice that this week in 6th through 8th, we're focused on historic time beginning. And you'll see this, your child will bring it home, but Inside this, there's some good articles for students to read. It's not a real, you'll take just a minute to look at that. I know you can't read it, but just so that you get, if you haven't seen one yet, I just wanted to give you an understanding about how it's laid out. It's really just a newspaper format. It meets 100% of the state requirements in Tennessee, which is something that's very important for us in both history and in science. But it's also very practical. It's not asking students to consume 400 pages of information or what might seem like 400 pages to them each week. And there's a lot of online tools that we're going to be utilizing. We hope to have our computers in place by the end of this month. And there's a lot of tools online that they'll be able to utilize each day in their history and in their science course. But it's important that you are seeing these newspapers come home. This is the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade history. This is the 4th and 5th grade, history. And this is the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science. And so if your student is in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, you should see 2 of these newspapers fresh every week. I give them out on Monday mornings, and they're responsible. We get through the newspaper edition usually in 2 class periods. We add some things to it on Wednesday. Sometimes we're finished mid-period on the second day of the week. And then we review on Wednesday. We look at a lot of online pieces that add to the curriculum. And so they're ready for the test. More importantly, because it's looking at it from an investigative standpoint and helping students go from fill-in-the-blank answers, which is a lower-level academic skill, to being able to look through certain answers and find the one that is most correct. We are letting them use these in their testing time. I may not do that all the time, and sometimes on short answers or on essay, they're going to have to study for those and prepare for those, and we will get them aware of that. But what I'm saying is there's really no excuse for students not preparing themselves. I asked our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, and I'm not complaining, I'm just making sure that I communicate well. I asked them on Thursday how many of them had studied the night before for their science test. And out of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there were 10 students. 3 of them told me that they had studied 15 minutes or less. Now you might say, well, Mr. Harris, if they have the textbook and all the answers to the 10 question or 12 question test, mostly multiple choice, is in here, why can't they just wait till they get to school on Thursday to take the test, and they don't really need to study? Well, the reason is because they're not familiar with the material, and therefore when the question's asked, they're not really sure where to find it in the newspaper, and even if they do find it, they're not familiar with the material. We've studied it, we've reviewed it, we've previewed it, we've dug into it, but it's also that they need to do some marking up of this, making some notes, making sure that they're prepared, because for all practical purposes, with the studying that we're doing in class, the overviews that we're giving, digging into it, the questions that are being asked, and then them having access to literally all the material that's going to be on the test, with those 2 things working together, they should be getting hundreds on their tests. And if not, then they need to find out if they're not studying well, they're not asking questions, they don't understand, they need to ask questions. I'm glad to help, but many times when we ask questions, maybe some students are asking questions, and that's a great thing. And so I don't want to sound negative when I'm saying these things. I'm just saying that as you and I work together as teacher, and some of our other teachers work together as parents and teachers working with students, let's all work together to be sure that they're preparing themselves well and digging into the information and utilizing it as much as possible. In Bible, each week they're going to have a weekly Bible verse that they need to memorize. They already know the Bible verses coming up for the test. They have a 4th and 5th grade have a Bible test on Monday. 6th through 8th grade have a Bible test on Monday as well, both over the 2nd chapter in their respective books. If you have any questions about that, please let me know, and I would be glad to help you more, help the students more. We're here to serve them. We want them to excel, not just in history and science, obviously, in Bible, but also in math And in language arts, I know that Mr. Rayosh and Mrs. Kazone are working really hard to make themselves available to help students do the very best that they can and make sure that we help students excel academically. So if you have a question or concern, please let us know. We'll do our best to respond and help any way that we can. Just to give you a little overview of where we've been, this past week, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we were introduced to prehistoric history. And of course, if you ask your student about that, one of the things that we continue to emphasize in prehistoric times is that it is all literally a theory. It's like everything else. It's theorized by many historians that this is what possibly happened. And sometimes we go back to archaeologists and we go back to anthropologists and we say, this is what happened and we believe it because of this or that reason. But we emphasize to students that the prehistoric times is simply a theory, and we want students to be aware of that. We certainly did not teach it as something that we believe in the sense of hundreds of millions of years ago, but we do want students to be familiar with it. And then we gave a biblical worldview to help them understand God's perspective on that and how God's Word says that time began and how humanity was created. As we get into this week, and we took our chapter 3 test as well in history on Thursday. And we'll start this week with a look at historic time, and we'll begin to get into different civilizations because that's what 6th, 7th grade, and that's what they're doing in history this year. 4th and 5th history, we're doing 4th and 5th history rather. I'm sorry. We're doing 1850 to present day, and this past Thursday we took our chapter 3 test, and that focus was on how Tennessee was impacted by the Civil War. As we get into week 4, starting on Monday morning, we're looking at more about how the Civil War impacted the entire Union, both in the North and in the South and the Confederate States, and the impact that different battles had and how it impacted families. And you'll notice on the back of all the newspapers there will be crossword puzzles that students can go back in and they find key terms that help them understand the big picture of that week's lesson. So I encourage you to go over that with them as well. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to unpack that with them as we start week 4. 6th, 7th, and 8th science. This past week we focused on chemical reactions, and this week we're moving into force, how things move in the universe. The chapter 3 test was on Thursday of this past week. We're moving to our chapter 4 test will be the coming Thursday. And again, I cannot emphasize enough them looking through their magazine, making notes, highlighting things to make sure that they have proper understanding so they do well. They also have some homework that's due on Monday as well if they're in 6th, 7th science. They had a physical and chemical reaction, a couple of sheets that they needed to turn in. And I talked to them about each week we introduce the new vocabulary words for the week. And it's important for them to look through their magazine and find each of the vocabulary words and make sure that they make for themselves a vocabulary book inside their binder. And so they have the vocabulary sheets and they're supposed to put them in alphabetical order. And I've been through the procedures with them in the class. But we just want to make sure that they understand the terms and understand the definitions. And so we're going to have a short quiz on Monday morning over some of the vocabulary words. I'm not telling them that it's all of the first 3 weeks, just some of the vocabulary words, and so they need to be familiar with them, and we're going to do a vocabulary check to see that all of the vocabulary words they've actually put a definition in for, and then I'll put a grade in for that. But I've been over that with all of the students beginning back with the first part of last week, so that's not that should not be breaking news to them as we've been over all that. 4th and 5th Bible, we have completed pretty much all of our focus on Abraham, him learning to trust and obey God, and they have a test over the chapter 2 over Abraham on Monday, and then of course we're going to focus on Jacob as the next character in the Old Testament starting on Tuesday, and then for 6th through 8th Bible we have finished up our Old Testament overview. And we'll take our chapter test on Old Testament overview this coming Monday as well. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday during Bible, we'll begin to look at an overview of the New Testament before we eventually dig in to the New Testament book by book. The next week it'll be Matthew after this coming week, where we just do a simple overview. So anyway, I hope that this has given you a little bit of information to help you make sure that you're talking with your child, your student that is. And if you have any questions for us as a school, whether it be talking to me as a teacher for science or history and Bible, or talking to me as a principal or some other hat that I wear, feel free to contact me anytime, and I'll do all that I can to help you. Hope that you have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. God bless you.